Upton Sinclair was a journalist and author, whose literary works were the product of the Progressive Era and highlighted the peak of regulation. His most notable work being bestseller The Jungle spoke of the horrid conditions within the meatpacking industries for the common laborer, and spoke of the disgusting conditions of the products. This revolutionized consumer safety and standard precautions regarding sanitation in industries by inspiring the Meat Inspection Act and the Pure Food and Drug Act. Another novel of Sinclair's, The Brass Check, addressed the problem of yellow journalism and how he believed it was ruining the world of journalism. This would amend the scope of news reporting and other writings by being partially responsible for the first code of ethics in journalism, which states, "Seek truth and report it." Sinclair was a prime example of a muckraker, but his only ever goal was to make change and to touch the hearts of people. Shortly before writing The Jungle, Upton Sinclair's goal was to expose the meatpacking industry, surprisingly not primarily for the blatant disregard of even the most basic forms of sanitation and handling and processing of the meat, but for the horrendous mistreatment of its workers. Sinclair went undercover into the meat industry to investigate worker treatment, but what he found was far worse than what he had imagined. The workers were provided with basically nothing. There was no regard for workers who had skin diseases handling the meat, or workers with tuberculosis who would often cough up blood near the meat. The facilities were very primitive, so most urinated in corners on the work floor, and there was no soap or water to clean their hands. Some workers would even lose fingers by mishandling knives while working with the meat. Sinclair's excellent writing allowed him to express the conditions in full detail, and the height of his rage manifested in The Jungle. He had hoped that most people who read the book would feel the same disgust over worker mistreatment. However, the public was most horrified with the disgusting conditions of the products they were consuming. Sinclair had included a whole chapter solely discussing the conditions of the meat. There he relayed that diseased meat would not be separated from good meat, as they all arrived from the slaughterhouse together, and therefore would be processed together. Sinclair also explained that sometimes meat would be placed on the floor, so when they were picked up and placed into carts, they would take sawdust and even entire dead rats with them. After the publishing of this novel, there was a heavy pressure on Congress to pass both the Meat Inspection Act, which ensured meat was processed under sanitary conditions, and the Pure Food and Drug Act. The Pure Food and Drug Act was by far the most long-standing and widespread regulatory act, in which all consumer products were taken a closer look at to ensure safety. This new distrust that was established also affected the world of advertisement, as many were questioning the truth behind what goes into manufacturing. Sinclair's work would also inspire the bureau that would later become the Food and Drug Administration we know today. The Pure Food and Drug Act would later be reinforced by the Food, Drug, Cosmetic Act, which gave the authority to the Food and Drug Administration to oversee the safety of food, drugs, and cosmetics. Upton Sinclair inspired the generations of consumer safety work seen and still being improved on today. Another notable claim by Sinclair was his novel, The Brass Check, which would reform the journaling world by criticizing a popular tactic and writing style at the time in yellow journalism, convincing those who read his novel that change needed to be made for the profession he loved to return to the most basic but still honorable form. This would inspire the first code of ethics for journalism, where honesty would be upheld within the guidelines of the vow, seek truth and report it. This clause heavily influences the way we see news in other writings today, as it encourages writers to do things such as remain honest, report sources when possible, never plagiarize, support the exchange of views, and other things. Sinclair served as a role model for writers of all forms for generations to come, and promoted credibility within the writing world. Upton Sinclair's influence has had a definite impact, not just in the U.S., but the world. His determination to expose the meatpacking industry has made a notable difference in the way sanitation is treated within the workplace and even everyday society. As his morals and values easily shone through his writing, many were inspired enough by his writing in The Brass Check to come together and reform journalism for the better worldwide. His dedication to the profession he lived and breathed serves as inspiration to us all, that anyone can make a notable difference in the world with hard work, and most importantly, passion.